Hello everyone, this is Attack the Backlog, the podcast where I, Marc, tries to make a dent in their backlog one game at a time. This is episode 7, Titanfall 2, a first-person shooter where you hop, slide, and wall run all over the place and, from time to time, jump inside a giant robot and wreak havoc. These robots are known as Titans. That's the name. And they fall from the sky. Thus Titanfall. And unlike its predecessor, Titanfall 2 introduced a real single-player campaign. The first game had some kind of story attached to the multiplayer. I don't remember how it worked exactly, but there was some kind of story that happened as you played from mission to mission. I don't know, but it wasn't substantial. It wasn't that meaty. It was just kind of this little thing that was tacked on. It very much felt like that, at least. Titanfall 2, because a lot of people wanted a campaign, me included, question mark? I didn't really mind it not having one, but I wouldn't have been against it. But Titanfall 2 introduced a single player campaign that I don't know if a lot of people ended up playing. I, for one, didn't until just now. I remember hearing so many people talk about how good it was, at least on the critic side, and I always meant to get around to it, but just never did. And I, having now played it, feel really bad about having taken so long to get to it, because it is fantastic. It is one of the best single player campaigns I've played in a first person shooter in a long time, maybe ever. It doesn't have the best story, but it is so much fun to play, and at no point during the, I think, 5.5 hour campaign did it ever feel like a slog. I never felt like the pacing started to slow down at any point. It was so perfectly paced, and I just enjoyed every single second of it. And though I said the story wasn't that great, it's nothing special. You're part of this militia group, and you're going up against this big corporation, the IMC, who are really overreaching or something. I don't know. You're the good guys, they're the bad guys. You gotta go take them down. Whatever. Pretty standard stuff. But what makes the campaign and the story special, or just the journey, is a relationship you have as this new pilot, Cooper, with a Titan who you take control of after his previous pilot dies pretty early on in the game, BT-7274 or BT-7274, who cares? It's just BT. But the relationship you have with your Titan grows over the course of the campaign, and it's such a delightful little buddy cop story, essentially, where he starts to warm on you. At first, he just calls you pilot because he doesn't really know who you are. You just met. Eventually he starts calling you by your name, and you just have this great rapport with each other. I didn't even know this was going to happen, but you occasionally get options in terms of the dialogue and how you want to play your role. Do you want to play it serious the whole time? Do you want to occasionally be cheeky or sarcastic? And BT will reply. I remember one line in particular where you're talking about love, and you, as Cooper, can say, "Oh, it sounds like you're in love." And BT replies, "Well, I like this and this," because he listed a criteria for love, and there were 4 things. He's like, "Well, I do like this and this, so yes, I am 50% in love with whatever." His delivery was great as well, but just going throughout the story, you build this relationship. So at points in the story where you are separated from BT, it gets a little sad and it's a little lonely, even though he implants a bit of himself or whatever into your helmet so he can still talk to you, but not having him around is a little bit sad. And really late in the game, where he is destroyed, his original body is destroyed, that period of time before you get a new body for him is super sad as well. And then eventually on the last mission, you're going through it, and he sacrifices himself and saves your life, and it's just sad that he goes. But there's a little teaser at the end or whatever, a stinger, that he's not gone, because he's not constrained to the Titan body that he's in. He's just this AI and can be put into a new body. But I really enjoyed the story because of that. It just was a delightful relationship that grew over time and was one of the more enjoyable relationships I've experienced in the game. It was very natural. It felt organic, the way they grew to like each other more and more, and having those dialogue options every now and again were a nice touch. But sometimes they would happen when I was wall running and running from wall to wall, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't have this conversation. And even in those, at times they would have it like, hey, I'm busy, I can't do this right now, but you still have to press the button to tell them, hey, I'm busy, I can't do this right now. But it was kind of funny in that sense. But I really enjoyed the story because of that, despite the fact that the story itself was nothing particularly special. It's a forgettable story that is made memorable by its characters. And I also like the way the boss titans, I guess you can call them, come into play throughout the campaign, where whenever they show up, it shows their name in big bold letters, and they deliver a very short monologue and come out of their cockpit just to show you themselves. And it just feels like, oh, we're gonna have a good old-fashioned fight. I know who you are now, and I'm gonna take you down. It felt like it was more special than just, oh, here's a Titan. It gave it a bit more weightiness, I guess. But with that said, I think I'll move on to the gameplay, because as great as the characters are, it wouldn't matter if the game isn't fun. And the game is a lot of fun. I don't know how different it feels from the first game. I think there might be some more Titan loadouts, but it still feels really good. And the thing I notice going through the game is that the movement and maneuverability of your pilot when you're not in the Titan feels so good and fluid. I rarely ever failed when I was doing a bunch of wall running or whatnot, or just jumping around and moving at a very fast pace. I felt like I was always in control, and whenever I failed, I knew what the issue was, and it was usually on me at just not timing things correctly. It reminded me of my time with Mirror's Edge not that long ago, and how frustrating that whole experience was. And I had the complete opposite feeling the whole time I was playing Titanfall 2. It just felt so good, and I enjoyed every second of it. The gunplay feels really good. Sliding and taking out enemies feels great. Wall running from wall to wall to wall to wall sometimes felt really good. It just felt right. At no point did it ever feel like, this feels a little weird. I like some of the weapons they have in there too. They have a lot of standard weapons, like your assault rifles and whatnot, but then there's this one like energy weapon that I think the Spectres use, which shoots like this red electrical beam that was fun because it would make the humans explode. It would just make the robots die or whatever. But when you shot it at a human and put enough bits of energy in them, I guess, it would make them explode, and it was fun. And watching the other humans freak out when you're using it, and just freak out at you because you're a super powerful pilot as you take down so many of these soldiers. But what I really appreciated about the campaign in terms of the gameplay is that at about 2.5 hours in, it gets extra neat and cool when it introduces this time traveling element. You get to this building, this facility, and it's all broken down in the current time. And when you're walking through the first part of it, the world starts shaking, and then you are transported back in time to when it was functioning and everything. And you're like, what is going on? And you continue through this area. You're just constantly being sent between times. Eventually you get to this point where I believe you get this arm not arm, but this glove thing that allows you to freely move between time. And that makes both the combat and the platforming really interesting. With combat, you have to deal with both times where in the current time where everything is destroyed, there are these creatures that are inhabiting the facility, which they were experimenting on, you can see in the earlier time, and they come at you in large waves, and they can be very overwhelming and take a good amount of damage. So you can switch between time, but then when you go back in time, you'll be fighting against the regular humans, the soldiers, and some specters and whatnot. And managing the different times and enemies becomes really wild, because you'll be moving around the space and you'll get like a little light glow that shows you where enemies are in the other time when you switch, just so you know the placement, because you might just jump between times to find the best positioning and have to remember where they are and avoid, say, the creatures in the current time, just so you can get a better position in the earlier time. And it made those combat scenarios really fun and intense, and I had a blast with all that. But then they also play around with the platforming, as they'll have platforms and walls and stuff like that that either are broken in the current time or non-existent, and you will have to at times jump between things while switching time at the same time. So many times I'm saying time, but that plays out really cool as you're doing all this, and you hear the enemy saying, how is he moving this way? What is going on there? They don't understand what's going on, because as far as they can tell, you're just jumping in thin air and stuff like that. And I had a blast with that and was surprised that it worked as well as it did. I didn't have any issues with that either. I thought if there was any place where the platforming and the jumping and all that kind of stuff could really show its weakness, it would be in those sections, but it all worked perfectly. It felt so good, and I was really surprised by that section as well. I guess it's somewhat known if you paid attention, but I either never knew about that or completely forgot about it. So when the whole time travel aspect came into play, I was very pleasantly surprised and enjoyed it the whole time. And that only lasts for one mission, one section of the game, and then you lose that ability. But even though that specific section really stands out as the highlight, I guess, the rest of the game is still so much fun. When you are playing as a pilot and wall running all over the place and shooting people while you're wall running and throwing various kinds of grenades and using your cloak to either let yourself heal or get behind someone and take them out stealthily and stuff like that. That all feels great. The gunplay feels really good. And when you're in the Titan, you feel like a badass. You're taking on all these enemies. Whenever you jump into the Titan, the animation is different depending on where you enter him from, and that's always cool. It's a very cool game, very fun and cool game. And I like that with the Titan, you're not having to worry about picking up different loadouts. You don't have to worry about, okay, that Titan I just fought dropped this weapon, I'm going to go and pick it up. You can just switch it out. You don't have to worry about ammunition or anything like that. It's just about the various loadouts you have. So one loadout will be a machine gun, one will be like a shotgun, one will be a grenade launcher, one will be a rocket launcher, one will be like a laser beam, and all these other types of loadouts. I think there are maybe around 10 in total. And I like that they didn't overcomplicate all that with having to find ammunition or find different weapons. When you unlock a loadout, it's there forever. You press right on the D-pad and you can switch between the ones you unlocked, and you unlock a good amount pretty early on, and when you get to the final one, that is this giant Gatling gun, you feel so powerful, and it just made for one hell of an enjoyable ride. I really enjoyed it. I think it was the perfect length, even though I would have liked more, but I think for the story and everything, it just felt so right. Like I said, it never slogged or anything like that, so there's a chance that maybe if it went a little longer, it would have felt a little meandering or whatnot at some point, but at no point in the campaign did I ever feel like, okay, clock's ticking, let's get this thing rolling. I was in it from start to finish, and I really hope with Titanfall 3 that I think is being made, I hope it's being made, that they make another fantastic campaign, because I was blown away. Despite knowing that people really enjoyed the Titanfall 2 campaign, I was really surprised by how good it actually is. And like I said, it doesn't have the most amazing story, but the characters, specifically you and BT, are so delightful to be with for that ride, and the gameplay is so tight and feels so good. It's so nice to have a game where you are moving very quickly and jumping around and climbing up things at times and just being very agile and able to move around an environment and experiment with your movement, for it to feel as good as it does in Titanfall 2 while also taking down enemies and shooting them at the same time. It's a great achievement. It's impressive that they were able to make it feel as good as they did. And I remember it feeling good in the first Titanfall, but I think having that kind of gameplay in a campaign where you won't be dying as often, because in a multiplayer game you'll be dying plenty of times, and that loop becomes much quicker, and in a campaign it's not that it's slower, it's just that I guess you are more powerful in a sense. I don't know, but it really made the gameplay shine and showed how good it really is, at least for me. And I can't recommend it highly enough. I wish that there was a way people could just buy the single player by itself. I'm not sure how much Titanfall 2 costs now, maybe $30, but if that is the case, I still recommend it. But I think it would be really nice if they split it and had it so you could buy the campaign for just $15 and the multiplayer for $15. And because it's pretty old at this point, I think it must be part of the EA Access Vault. So if you have an Xbox One or PC, I think now, you could play it there for free, I think. I'm not sure, but I highly recommend it. It was so much fun. I had an absolute blast playing it, and it looks really good too, which is impressive given that it uses the Source engine. The Source engine can still look pretty damn good. But that will do it for this episode of Attack the Backlog. Once again, I am your host, Marc. Y'all can find me on Twitter, pretty much everywhere at PXSausage. The site is, of course, pixelatedsausage.com, where you can find this podcast and the Pixelated Sausage podcast, which are available on podcast services across the globe, like Stitcher Radio, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And if you'd like to check out the video version of these podcasts, you can go over to youtube.com/pixelatedsausage and check them out there if you're not already doing that, which I hope you are, because this show is best consumed in video form. I say that all the time, and I'll never stop it. But I highly recommend doing that. And if you'd like to check out some of my art, which you can do if you like, you can go over to pxsart.com and check it all out over there. If you see something you like, click the link. It'll take you to where you can purchase a print of the piece you fancy. And if you fancy the site in general and everything we do, please go over to patreon.com/pxs and support us there. And that will do it. So, as always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.